In my opinion, the most terrible thing for a man is to return home and find his wife with her lover. But my situation turned out to be even worse. I found my wife with my brother in our bedroom. The November day was bitterly cold, and Sam's bad cold only made things worse. He was utterly miserable, and the fact that he had to work outside didn't help. He could have stayed home and called in sick like many others, but that wasn't his style. It was his family's business, and he had always given his all in everything he did. He once heard someone say, "If it's worth doing 100%. Sam only ever called in sick when he physically couldn't make it, and that had only happened twice, both times because he was in the hospital. Pushing through, he returned to managing the crew. By 10 a.m., though, he could feel his body giving out, and he knew he couldn't keep going. Arturo, his foreman, took one look at him and practically shoved him into the truck. "Go home, Samuel. You're no good to us right now, and you'll end up getting the whole crew sick." 20 minutes later, Sam found himself sitting in his truck parked on the street in front of his house. He parked there because his brother's truck was parked in the driveway. It was strange for 3 reasons. First of all, his brother had to be at work. Secondly, Jimmy had no real reason to be in Sam's house without him. And thirdly, Sam went on a date with the film crew to cover for Jimmy, who claimed to have been in a nearby town and was meeting with a potential client. Of all the possible explanations for why Jimmy's truck ended up there, Sam couldn't think of one that made sense. "Oh my God, yes, Jimmy." Camille's voice came from behind the open bedroom door, confirming Sam's worst suspicions. "Damn it," Sam thought, switching his phone to video mode and pointing it at the open door. "Jimmy makes me cover for him so he can have fun with my wife? Let's see how he likes it when I hurt him." Neither of them noticed how a figure slipped silently into the room and stopped at the foot of the bed. After perfectly timed punches, Sam struck. Jimmy's world changed instantly. He was enjoying the company of his brother's wife, and in an instant he felt intense pain. Camille felt a sudden, powerful jolt from Jimmy as he involuntarily leaned forward with superhuman strength, trying to pull away from the intense pain that pierced him. Horror gripped her when she looked back and saw her husband's face contorted with rage. Sam managed to regain his composure as he walked around the bed and saw his older brother curled up on the floor in pain. He realized that any further retaliation could land him in jail. Jimmy, on the other hand, was terrified. He knew he stood no chance against his younger brother. Even in a fair fight, Sam would easily overpower him. Jimmy recalled Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Being the older brother, Jimmy had always been able to handle Sam, but things had changed. While Jimmy had become softer from working mostly at a desk, Sam had gotten stronger working outside with the construction crews. Jimmy had always enjoyed teasing Sam, reminding him that as the older brother he would always be able to take him. That day, though, Sam had thrown out a challenge in front of Jimmy's wife, an arm wrestling match. Jimmy, overconfident and amused that Sam would even try, laughed and said, "Time to show my little brother who's boss again." With a smirk, he sat down at the table with Sam. But as soon as the match started, Jimmy knew he was in trouble. He couldn't move Sam's arm at all. Sam just sat there smirking, barely trying, his muscles tense but not strained. Jimmy looked into Sam's face and realized his brother was toying with him, relishing in the chance to humiliate him in front of his wife and family. All the teasing and bullying Jimmy had done to his younger brother over the years flashed before his eyes. Sam, enjoying the moment, even pushed Jimmy's arm halfway down, checked his watch, then brought it back to center, before finally ending it. Sam yawned in boredom as he effortlessly pinned Jimmy's hand to the table, completing the humiliation. Jimmy vowed to get revenge after that. To be fair, he had it coming. He'd bullied his little brother his whole life, because, at heart, Jimmy was just a bully. He never let an offense slide without payback. By the time the next Thanksgiving rolled around, Jimmy was already divorced. His wife had hired a private investigator and caught him cheating. 6 months later, Camille and Sam were married. Now, let me give you some background on my family. My dad, Jacob, started his own construction company when I was 3. He set it up as a corporation, but all the shares were kept within the family. My mom, Evelyn, initially handled the bookkeeping. I had an older brother, Jimmy, whom I've already mentioned, and a younger sister named Stephanie, or Steph, as she preferred. For the most part, we were a happy family. My parents loved us, and we loved each other. Jimmy was often a bully and never missed a chance to throw his status as the older sibling in my face. Steph was the baby of the family, the youngest and the only girl, so naturally my parents spoiled her. To me, she was just a brat. My older brother was always the designated heir, while my sister was the pampered one. I was stuck in the middle. Sure, my parents loved me, and I loved them back. They didn't really play favorites, or at least, I don't think they thought they did. But the fact remained that my brother was the heir, and my sister was the baby of the family. Meanwhile, I was just the middle child. In terms of siblings, my brother constantly reminded me he was the eldest, and my sister treated me like a convenient helper rather than a sibling. I doubt my parents realized what they were doing when they insisted I chauffeur her around after I got my driver's license. They didn't demand the same when my brother got his license. Now, I know the way I'm describing this might come off as complaining, but that's not my intention. These are just the facts. I knew my place and how things worked. Don't start blaming my parents, at least not yet. This is just the family dynamic. Everyone had a role. I was the middle child, and I grew to accept that. My brother was always going to inherit the family business. That's just how it went. My sister would be looked after. That's how it worked. As for me, I was the middle child. I knew I'd have to carve my own path. So here I am. I was married for almost 1.5 years only to find my older, divorced brother sleeping with my wife, in my own house, in my own bed. She always refused me some things in bed, but she had no problem giving them to my brother. There is no need to go into all the details. Jimmy grabbed his clothes and ran out of the house. It took Camille 20 minutes to pack up and leave, too. Before the wedding, the house belonged to me, so it was not part of the common property. We had a prenuptial agreement, so I just gave my lawyer a power of attorney, outlined my terms, and left town. 6 months later, my lawyer sent me the final decision on the divorce. It may seem that everything went smoothly, but it's not. Of course, I left the city, but not far away. I talked to my parents and showed them the evidence. They told me to put up with it. Jimmy was going to take over the company, and I had to give it up for the sake of harmony in the family. Even my sister supported me, saying that even though Jimmy was a jerk, it was just a small obstacle to the common good. If I had insisted on my own, I would have lost. They wanted me to just move on and be happy for Jimmy and Camille. To make matters worse, she moved in with him that evening. I was told not to make a fuss. Jimmy was the chosen one, and it was clear that I was on my own in this case. I swore that I would only come back to take revenge. Listen, Jimmy is going to take over the company in a few years, my parents told me. Yes, we're disappointed with what he did, but we're not going to fire him. You're doing well. Accept it and obey. Don't make us choose between you. He's the heir. Deal with it." My sister, always so cold, intervened. "Oh, cry anything to me. So she slept with your brother, big deal. She just found a better option. To be honest, I don't blame her. Come to your senses and try to have Ramsey's report on my desk by Monday morning." When I finally talked to Camille, things only got worse. She admitted that it started about a month after our wedding. She also said that most of the time I covered for Jimmy so he could come and have fun with her. To make matters worse, she told me she was pregnant and that the baby was Jimmy's. I was innocent of all this, but my whole family sided with the scammers. I had to watch Jimmy and Camille being welcomed into the family with open arms, while everyone behaved as if our relationship had never existed. I listened as they doted on Camille and congratulated Jimmy on becoming a father and giving my parents their first grandchild. All this time I was quietly pushed aside. My divorce was barely mentioned, only casually mentioned as part of the schedule for Jimmy and Camille's upcoming wedding. I was invited to family dinners and parties, but it became painfully clear that these invitations were more out of a sense of duty than a real desire to see me there. As long as I kept showing up at work and doing my job, that was all that seemed to matter to them. The last time I saw my family, which turned out to be the last for the next 10 years, it lasted exactly 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It was during Thanksgiving dinner. I arrived in the late afternoon, went in, and began my congratulations. "Happy Thanksgiving, asshole, incubator, girl of easy virtue, and asshole," I announced as I entered the dining room. "Wow, you're so cute that I wanted to go to the bathroom." And at that moment, I was shown the door. I made 2 promises to myself. First of all, I will leave and never consider these people my family again. Secondly, one day I will come back to avenge what they did. They were my family, and they had to love and respect me. I did my best to be a good son and brother, but they turned their backs on me, even though they should have hugged and comforted me. I vowed to go back and destroy their world. I will show them the same mercy they showed me, none. 2 weeks later, "Where the hell is Samuel?" Jacob roared from his office. "What's going on?" Evelyn asked, anxiously as she hurried in. Although she hadn't seen her middle child for a while, she had just assumed he was still brooding over recent events. She felt a twinge of sadness for him, but couldn't go against her eldest son, who was set to take over the company. The Geraldson project is a month behind, and the inspector for the Mandelson building is insisting we tear out last week's work and redo it from scratch. This will cost us at least $50,000 and another 2 weeks to fix. Why did Samuel let this happen? Jacob fumed. Firstly, Stephanie interjected as she entered the office, the Geraldson project is Jimmy's responsibility, not Sam's, so I'm not sure why you're blaming him. Secondly, I haven't seen or heard from Sam in 2 weeks. He's not answering his phone, and the site supervisor also hasn't seen or heard from him recently. Sam damn well knows he's supposed to be covering for Jimmy on that project. He's been working on it for 6 months, so he should be familiar with it. Find him and make sure he reports to my office first thing tomorrow morning. It's time for him to stop his whining and get with the program. The next morning, a visibly anxious Stephanie found herself in her father's office. She had sent over 20 text messages and left multiple voice messages on Sam's phone. Desperate to talk to him, she had even gone to his house. Now she needed to explain to her angry father and the rest of the family what she had discovered. Where the hell is Samuel? I told you he needed to be here first thing this morning, but I don't see him, Jacob growled, glaring at his wife, eldest son, Camille, and daughter. Well, he's, Gone, she stammered. Gone? What do you mean, gone? Her mother inquired. I mean gone. I have no idea where he is. He's not answering texts, phone calls, or voice messages. I even went to his house yesterday and found that he had moved out. A cleaning crew was there, preparing the place for new tenants. It seems he's renting it out now, she explained. Are you telling me he abandoned his family? Jacob nearly shouted. Stephanie had spent a restless night after her discoveries. Unable to sleep, her mind replayed everything that had happened and been said over the past several years. Her inability to sleep grew worse as her thoughts became fixated on the way everyone had treated her brother, with memories replaying in vivid detail. No, she said quietly. I think he believes that his family abandoned him. 10 years later. After leaving home, I joined the Army Corps of Engineers. I attended college while working part-time at the company, until I graduated with a degree in civil engineering and an MBA. Although Jimmy was set to take over the company, I was supposed to be part of the executive team as well. That was the plan at least. However, my plans evolved over time. My new strategy turned out to be even better, and today it was about to come to fruition. I couldn't help but smile as I watched my younger sister enter the building across the street. She glanced at me, but it was clear she didn't recognize me. I had changed quite a bit over the past decade. With some time on my hands, I reflected on the past few years. As I mentioned, I enlisted in the military. With my education and experience, I was welcomed enthusiastically. I found myself in the sandpit, working on rebuilding infrastructure. I had a lot of free time, which I used to exercise, practice weapons, and even had a few special forces guys teach me hand-to-hand combat. It wasn't that I expected to need it, but I wanted to improve my strength and be able to protect myself if necessary. It was 6 months before my enlistment was set to end. By then, I had been promoted to captain, and my commanding officer was hinting at re-enlisting. To be honest, I was seriously considering it. We were convoying to a new location when the incident occurred. An IED exploded as we passed by. Our Hummer was destroyed but managed to absorb most of the blast and shrapnel. I was injured, though I didn't think it was too severe. It hurt a lot, though. Amidst the chaos of gunfire, I struggled to free myself from the wreckage. That's when I saw one of the MPs was critically hurt. Her leg was badly injured and she was losing a lot of blood. I grabbed the first aid kit to help control her bleeding when someone shouted that the vehicle was on fire. Holding the kit under my arm, I unfastened her seatbelt and dragged her away to a safer area. I managed to stabilize her as the firefight continued around us. Once I had done what I could for her, I picked up a rifle and joined the battle, doing my best to keep the enemy at bay. I wasn't focused on my own blood loss as I fought beside her, aiming at anyone who tried to approach our position. 20 minutes later, completely exhausted, I heard the sound of attack helicopters overhead. My strength finally gave out just as I saw the medics rushing toward us. "Son of a bit H, get these two on the evac chopper now," I heard one of them shout before everything went dark. My eyes opened to find myself gazing into a pair of green eyes, framed by the face of an angel with lustrous red hair. "Well, damn," I murmured. The angel's eyebrows furrowed and her expression shifted to a frown. "What's wrong?" she asked in a sweet, melodic voice. I was convinced I'd make it through, but it seems I've died. "Why do you think you're dead?" "Well, having never died before, I can't be certain. But I would assume that waking up to find an angel looking at me might be a strong sign of having passed on." Her expression turned to amusement as she began to laugh. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm far from an angel. Actually, I'm a lawyer." I smiled. So that just means I've ended up in the other place. But honestly, I don't mind as long as I get to see you here. Well, if it's up to me, you'll be seeing a lot of me. Fortunately for both of us, it won't be in hell. You, my brave hero soldier, are still alive. Right now, you're in a hospital in Germany. You were treated on base and then airlifted here. All right. Since you mentioned that you're a lawyer, not a nurse, I'd like to understand who you are and why you're here with me. Not that I'm complaining, but I'm not sure a lawsuit against the insurgents for pain and suffering will be effective. She laughed again, and I found her laughter quite charming. No, I'm not here to sue the insurgents. I'm here to thank you for saving my sister's life. My name is Rebecca Caulfield. My sister June was the MP you pulled from the Hummer and provided first aid to. Everyone I've spoken to has insisted that without your intervention, she wouldn't have survived. So, how is she doing? Will she be all right? I asked. She'll be fine. They managed to save her leg, but she'll always have at least a slight limp. That's how I came to meet Becca and her sister. As promised, Rebecca spent her time in Germany divided between me and her sister. I chose not to re-enlist and was discharged with a Purple Heart and a Silver Star. Back in the States, I continued seeing Rebecca. We got along well and started dating. I shared my past with her, including how my ex-wife and family had betrayed me, and revealed my plan for revenge. My idea was to start my own construction company and compete against them. Since I'd been in the military and didn't need much money, I invested everything I had until I had enough to launch my plans. Being familiar with my family's business, I knew exactly how to undercut them and attract their clients and better employees. While I might not completely destroy them, I could become more successful and significantly impact their income. Rebecca thought it over for a moment, then gave me a mischievous smile. How would you like to really get back at them? She then shared her plan, and I was intrigued. I liked it a lot. It turns out Rebecca's parents are extremely wealthy. They also liked me a lot and were quite angry with my family for their actions. It was also convenient that her older brother was a financial genius. Using a mix of assets, they set up a new LLC. Rebecca's semi-retired father was made president of the company, her brother was named acting CFO, and Rebecca was the acting CEO. To keep my name off the official documents, I was essentially running things behind the scenes. The first step we took was to acquire a small construction company that was poorly managed. The turnaround was swift once I took over operations. 6 months later, we added another company to our portfolio. By the time we reached the final stage of our plan, we had acquired 5 more companies across different regions of the country. Rebecca and I also grew very close and started dating exclusively. You might be curious about June. She had recovered as much as possible and, with extensive physical therapy, managed to walk with only a slight limp. Due to her injuries, she had been medically retired from the military. There was never any rivalry between June and Becca that concerned me. Although June was extremely grateful for my role in saving her life, she made it clear that I was not her type. It turns out that her preferences and mine have quite a few similarities. Had my name been Samantha instead of Samuel, she might have been far more interested. Now I found myself sitting across the street from my family's business, preparing to exact my revenge. Over the past few years, I had accumulated considerable wealth through investments and the success of our new company. Rebecca and I had also become engaged in the last month. I was grinning as I waited to exact my retribution on my former family. They were unaware of the impending upheaval. What they didn't realize was that a few specific individuals had been quietly purchasing all available public stock. Just a week ago, these investors had reached the necessary threshold for our plan to succeed. Steph was in a foul mood, though that wasn't unusual for her. In fact, being in a bad mood had been her default setting for the past few years. She wasn't oblivious to the fact that she wasn't well liked by most of the company's employees. Screw them, she thought. As chief financial officer and the daughter of the chairman of the board, she had a lot of power. If things got too difficult, she could always turn to her older brother, the CEO. This was a family-run business, and anyone who crossed her would soon find themselves out of a job. But her current frustration wasn't about the employees. She was upset because an unscheduled board meeting had been called, which was highly unusual. The board typically only met quarterly, and most meetings were informal, held around the family table. These meetings were usually just a formality, as the major decisions had already been made by her parents, brother, and herself. With the four of them, plus the proxy votes from her absentee middle brother, they controlled 60% of the company's shares, each family member owning 12%. To explain, several years ago, the family, excluding Sam, who had left without a word, decided that a major expansion was necessary. They decided to go public and sell shares to raise capital for the expansion. The family ensured that each member retained 12% of the shares, thus maintaining control with 60% of the company. Although no formal agreement was made with Sam, his shares were cast in favor of the family's decisions. No one thought much of it since he had cut off all contact. He even skipped Jimmy and Camille's wedding after his divorce from her, and no one knew where he was or what he was doing. After 10 years of silence, it was assumed that his votes were effectively the family's to use as they wished. Steph paused just before opening the door to the office building. A tall, well-built figure stood across the street. She only caught a brief glimpse, but he seemed oddly familiar. At that moment, a bus drove by, and the figure disappeared. Shrugging it off, she opened the door and went inside. The meeting dragged on, leaving Steph extremely bored. Despite having met just last month, the board was still required to follow the procedure. They started with reading the minutes from the previous meeting, revisited old business from last month, and discussed updates from various divisions, all unchanged from before. The new business was announced, and Steph's reaction was, "What the F?" "I'm making a motion to remove the chairman of the board for gross incompetence and moral failings," declared an attractive brunette who appeared to be limping slightly, likely due to some injury. Steph then noticed a significant reduction in attendees compared to usual board meetings. None of the major stockholders were present. Instead, there were a few minor shareholders, the brunette who made the motion, and a blonde woman who was new to her. "I second the motion," the blonde shouted. Steph was stunned. She couldn't believe they thought they could actually get this through. After all, the family held 60% of the votes, making it virtually impossible for the motion to succeed. The two women seemed out of their depth. The rest of the attendees, except for the two women, were shocked by the proposal. The discussion was brief but lively, and the voting commenced with the anticipated result. Ms. Caulfield, holding 35% of the shares, votes AYE, was stated, given her role in proposing the motion. Ms. Jeffers, with 4% of shares, votes AYE, said the blonde, as expected since she had seconded the motion. Several others voted no, totaling 1% of the shares. So the count was 40% yes, 1% no, with the family holding 60% of the votes still to be cast. Naturally, Jimmy, Mom, Dad, and I all voted no, with Dad being the chairman. The final count was 49% no versus 40% yes. Just as Jimmy was about to cast Sam's proxy vote to tip the balance, the door swung open, and the tall man Steph had seen across the street walked in. Samuel Johnson, with 12% of the votes. AYE, announced my brother, whom I hadn't seen or heard from in a decade. In a flash, our family business was seized from us and handed over to the brother we had previously neglected in favor of our older sibling. The meeting went downhill from there. Samuel was appointed chairman of the board, replacing our father. Jimmy was abruptly dismissed and replaced by the blonde, while I was also terminated as CFO and replaced by the brunette. Since none of us anticipated such a situation, we hadn't bothered with contracts, so there were no severance packages. Golden parachutes? More like lead balloons. We had 10 minutes to pack up and leave the premises. That was the only good news. All our homes and cars were company assets, set up that way for tax reasons. Sam was generous enough to give us a week to vacate, except for Jimmy and Camille, who were given only 24 hours. Mom, Dad, Jimmy, Camille, and I sat there in shock as Sam took control of the meeting. Although we had just lost all our power in the company, we remained significant shareholders and had the right to stay in the meeting. At least we still had our shares and the income from them. We also had our retirements tied to the company. As long as the company remained operational and profitable, we should be okay. Admittedly, none of us had much saved up, about $100,000 each for emergencies. With the company covering our mortgages, utilities, cell phones, and vehicles, we didn't need much to live on. We had agreed to reinvest most of the profits back into the company to foster growth, with plans to cash out later so we could retire comfortably while still young enough to enjoy it. "All right," Sam said as he took over the meeting. "Is there any other new business?" "Yes, there is one more item to address," the attractive brunette replied. "SRJ Enterprise has proposed a buyout. I assume you've reviewed the buyout package. In summary, they are prepared to purchase all available shares, provided they acquire at least 51% of the company. Once that threshold is met, Johnson Construction, Inc. will be shut down, and all assets will be absorbed by SRJ Enterprise." "Okay, and what about the employees?" "We have a lot of valuable staff here, and I don't want to see them suddenly unemployed and unable to support their families. Mr. Johnson, all non-executive employees will continue working as they have been. The only change they will notice is a different company name on their paychecks. Our clients will still work with the same familiar people. Executives, however, will either be terminated or offered similar positions with SRJ. SRJ has requested that our chairman of the board, CEO, and CFO transition to the same roles at SRJ. Their current chairman, CEO, and CFO will be stepping down." "What about those who don't want to sell their shares?" Sam asked, glaring at us. "I'm sure some won't want to sell." "Well, the SRJ representative mentioned that once they secure 51%, the price for any remaining shares will be significantly lowered. They won't need additional shares, and once their plan is public, the value of any remaining shares will drop sharply. Those who hold out will see their investments lose value." "All right. Is the representative here?" "Yes, she's in the lobby waiting. She wanted to be available because she hoped to move forward with this today. Would you like us to page security and have her escorted in?" Sam called security, and a few minutes later, an absolutely stunning woman walked through the doors. She was around 5 feet 7 inches with long, luxurious red hair cascading down her back. Her emerald green eyes were striking, and her face, adorned with a light sprinkling of freckles across a slender nose, was truly beautiful. I estimated her figure to be around a 36C bust with a slim waist that tapered into a set of curvy hips. She wore a charcoal-colored pencil skirt with a matching jacket and a light pink blouse. Her long, toned legs were sheathed in silk stockings, and she sported 4-inch Prada heels. I was bewildered by the parade of attractive women seemingly taking over our company today, and wondered what Sam's role was in all this. It was becoming increasingly clear that he was part of the scheme. After being absent for 10 years, he suddenly reappears today and votes his own family out of the business that Dad had built and we had developed. What was he up to? Why was he doing this? As mentioned earlier, we are offering $120 per share for the first 51%. After that, anyone looking to sell will be offered $2 per share. We don't value it any higher once we have majority control. Damn it. I missed the beginning of what she said and wished I hadn't heard the rest. The drop from $120 per share to $2 per share was catastrophic. I really didn't want to sell, but not selling could be devastating. I quickly stood up and shouted that I wanted to sell. I needed to get in line while I still could. The redhead flashed a brilliant smile at me as she turned in my direction. Certainly. We'd be glad to purchase your shares. You're currently 4th in line, so I'll extend our offer to you as soon as we've finalized the first 3 transactions. A sense of dread washed over me as I tried to figure out who the first 3 sellers were. Being 4th might as well have been last. I watched as Sam, then the blonde, then the brunette, all signed away their stocks. She already secured her 51%. All our money was locked into the company. In another 5 years, we had planned to sell and cash out. We could have been multimillionaires. Now we'd be fortunate to end up with just a few thousand. We all had to call for an Uber to go home and start packing. Security had already taken our cars and office keys before we were allowed to leave the premises. We had to arrange with security to return the next day to clear out our offices. The blonde informed us that she would revoke our access to the company servers, and that our logins would be deactivated within minutes. Not that it mattered much, as our laptops had already been confiscated. The blonde also mentioned that IT would come the next day to seize our home computers. Additionally, if any evidence showed that we had attempted to delete or alter any files before their arrival, we would face serious charges of corporate espionage, fraud, evidence tampering, and embezzlement. Jimmy was told that IT had already seized his computer right after the vote to remove Dad from his position. Oh, and we've got a forensic accountant going over the books as we speak, Sam added with a smile. The following evening, everyone gathered at their parents' house. Jimmy, Camille, and their 3 children had arrived with a moving van loaded with everything they could quickly pack. With little notice and no other options, they were moving in with Jacob and Evelyn while figuring out other living arrangements before the week ended. After unloading the truck temporarily into the garage, the family sat around the table to discuss the future. We need to figure out how to respond. We can't just sit back and accept this. We need to fight back and reclaim what's ours, Jacob declared. Fine, Evelyn replied. But how do we fight this? Where do we even start? We'll get lawyers involved and start filing lawsuits. Dad? We don't have any lawyers. The company lawyers are no longer ours. We would need to hire new ones, and that costs money. We each have accounts with some savings, but this legal battle could take a long time, and I need whatever cash I have to live on until I find another job and get back on my feet, Stephanie explained. Maybe it's time I pay my little brother a visit, Jimmy said with a grin, cracking his knuckles. Camille gave her husband a stern look. She had gotten a good look at her tall, muscular, and confident ex-husband as he dominated them in the boardroom. I strongly advise against that, she said. It didn't go well for you the last time, and he looks even tougher and stronger now than he did back then. The discussion dragged on for another half hour, with suggestions being made and quickly dismissed. Stephanie had been quietly listening, refraining from offering any ideas. However, she was quick to criticize each ridiculous suggestion that was brought up. She was waiting for the one idea that nobody had yet voiced, the one thing that might have even a slim chance of success. She knew it wouldn't solve everything, but it could potentially offer some relief from their current predicament. What if we just go and talk to him? A heavy silence fell over the room as everyone turned to stare at her, as if she had suddenly grown a third eye. Maybe if we went and spoke to him, apologized for how we treated him, and begged for his forgiveness, he might not be as harsh. It's clear he'll never return. Everything, but perhaps if we humble ourselves and admit how wrong we were, he might just ease our suffering enough that we can survive this and avoid total ruin. Chaos erupted. You expect me to go crawling to him, tail between my legs, and humiliate myself in front of that snotty brat after he abandoned his family? Then he comes back after 10 years without a word and betrays his own blood? Are you out of your mind? I will never disgrace myself by bowing down to that ungrateful bastard, Jacob roared. Are you serious, sis? After the way he treated my wife and me before he ran off, and after what he did today, you really think I'd do anything other than find a way to shove him back under the slimy rock he crawled out from? No way, Jimmy shouted. Camille couldn't hide her disdain at the thought of groveling before her spineless ex-husband. Jimmy is 10 times the man Sam ever was. There's no way I'll disgrace myself and my husband by begging that wimp for anything. Dear, her mother said with the loving but firm tone of someone who must guide her daughter, I understand how you feel, but we need to confront the person who has threatened this family. This is a time for fighting back, not surrendering. No, we won't be talking to our new enemy. We will find a way to strike back and reclaim what's ours. With that, Steph's idea was dismissed as foolish, and the conversation shifted to possible strategies for retaliation. Steph remained silent as the discussion continued around her. She had already decided what she needed to do for herself. She had to get out before the inevitable disaster struck. She realized too late what their loving family had done to her older brother, but by then, Sam was already gone. She never got the chance to tell him how sorry she was for her words and actions. She had been a selfish, spoiled brat back then. Her realization came 2 weeks too late. The next morning, June Caulfield looked up as Stephanie Johnson was ushered into her office by the secretary. She noticed that Stephanie was dressed in a very nice navy blue pencil skirt, matching jacket, powder blue blouse, black stockings, and 4-inch heels. Overall, it was a very polished yet conservative look. Stephanie's blonde hair was styled professionally, and her makeup was tastefully done. Despite all the stories June had heard about what a tough woman Steph was, she couldn't deny that she made a very attractive impression. Gesturing for her visitor to take a seat, June began the unexpected meeting. What can I do for you, Ms. Johnson? Frankly, I'm quite surprised by your visit this morning. Yes. Well, I imagine many people would be surprised to see me here. I actually came today to speak with Samuel, but I was told he's not expected in. They suggested you might be able to pass along a message for me. Perhaps. That depends on the message, of course. Given recent events, you can probably guess that he's not too keen on talking to your family. Just so we're clear, I've heard all the stories about you and your entire family. To be perfectly honest, after how you treated him, I'm not too fond of any of you either. So, I take it you two are close? Steph inquired. She figured she might as well gather as much information as she could on the new players in this situation. Maybe if she could win this woman over and show her genuine remorse for her past actions, she might be able to convince her brother to help her. Yes, we are close, but probably not in the way you're thinking. We're not dating. We're just very good friends. Actually, he's more like a brother to me than anything else. Oh, can you tell me how you met? I could, but I don't think that's any of your business right now. Maybe another time, but I'm rather busy preparing for the takeover by the new company. So what's the message you have for Samuel? This was her chance. She needed to make the woman in front of her understand that she genuinely regretted her past behavior. Please tell Sam that I really need to talk to him. I know how I behaved in the past, and I truly regret it. Unfortunately, I realized it about 2 weeks too late, and by then he had already left. I know everyone else is trying to plot a way to fight his actions, but I'm not going to be part of that. I just want the chance to look him in the eye and tell him how deeply sorry I am for the way I acted. Yes, I hope he might show some small amount of mercy toward me, but I'm not even going to suggest that he spares me from the consequences we all have coming. My hope is that he will allow me to have some sort of relationship with him. I want him to know that I will be distancing myself from the rest of the family, because I realize now that they were wrong, and I no longer want anything to do with them. I'm not even asking him to trust me. I just want to be able to see and talk with the brother I so foolishly pushed away. Steph sobbed. June glanced at the crying woman and sighed. Over the years, she had seen plenty of people's nonsense and had become quite adept at spotting it. Her past experiences with some former lovers and employees she had to let go had taught her how to distinguish between fake tears and genuine expressions of sorrow and loss. It was clear to her that Steph was being sincere. All right, listen. Sam is out of town for a few days. He won't be back until Monday. I'll pass along the message and see if I can get him to make some time for you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you what. How about we meet for drinks and dinner this evening? I don't know many people around here, and I'd like to chat with you some more to understand exactly what you're hoping to get out of this. Saying that Stephanie was surprised by the offer would be an understatement. She found June very attractive, and Steph was already inclined towards women. Yes, Samuel's little sister is a lesbian, although she had never revealed this to her family. She'd attended parties and events with different guys to maintain the illusion, but whenever she was out of town, she would seek out another woman to enjoy. Moreover, this would give her a chance to learn more about June and her relationship with her brother. She might also gather more information about the blonde and the redhead who had ambushed her and her family. Not that she intended to use that info to help the others in their fight. On the contrary, she wanted the information to help her establish a new relationship with Samuel. It would be helpful if she could gain some allies on her side. So, why don't you tell me more about what you're looking for here? June asked, a few hours later at the bar where she and Stephanie had met. I've already laid it all out earlier. What I really want is a fresh start and a better relationship with Sam. I know I messed up, and I accept responsibility for that. At this point, I'll gladly accept whatever forgiveness he's willing to give me. But even if he chooses to shut me out, I still want to show him that I've changed, and that I want to be a better sister to him. How can I be sure you're not just saying that to gather information to use against him? Honestly, you can't. There's no reason for you to trust me, and neither does Sam. I'm genuinely curious about what's happened to him over the past decade. I can see that he's important to you and that you share a deep bond with him. To be completely honest, I do want to learn more about you and the other 2 women in his life. If I manage to reconnect with my brother, I think it's important to know the people who are significant to him. If they matter to Sam, they should matter to me too. You mentioned that you're like a sister to him, which means I should aim to be like a sister to you as well. After all, if you're his sister, that makes you my sister too. Maybe you can even help me learn how to be a better sister to Sam than I was before. That's an interesting idea. It does sound believable, though. So you're clearly an attractive woman, and you seem to be very close to Sam. Why aren't you two dating? Steph asked, puzzled. June laughed. Well, there are actually two reasons for that. I can share this because there's really nothing you could use against us. First, Sam is already in a relationship with someone else, and they're actually engaged. Second, how should I put this? Let's just say that you'd be much more my type than Sam is. June smirked. Stephanie was taken aback. Are you saying you're gay? Absolutely, 100%. So, how did you two meet? I'm really curious. We met in the Army. He rescued me from a wrecked vehicle and saved my life. He was injured too, but not as badly. That's actually how I hurt my leg. My family was extremely grateful, and after learning his story, we sort of adopted him. Oh, wow. We had no idea he was in the military. He just disappeared without a word. Yesterday was the first time we heard from him. Yeah, I know. He did that intentionally. I understand. We didn't treat him well. So you mentioned he's engaged? Yep. As soon as he's done here, they're getting married. Can you tell me who she is? Is it the blonde woman? Laughs. No, she's actually engaged to my older brother. No, Sam is engaged to my sister. I think it was love at first sight for both of them when Sam woke up in the hospital in Germany. I wish I had known he was injured. I would have been there for him. Yeah, well, Becca really dedicated herself to nursing him back to health. Trust me, she's fiercely protective of him. You definitely don't want her thinking you intend to harm him in any way. She's a tough lawyer, and I've seen the destruction she leaves behind when she's determined to win in court. If you even make it to court, that is. She might just take you down herself. I've seen that happen a few times, too. Sounds like I really need to meet her and make sure I stay on her good side. You've actually already met her, and sweetie, you're already on her bad side. The redhead? Yep. She hates all of you. She's the one you really need to win over. Hungry, they decided to go to the nearest restaurant. Over dinner, their conversation deepened, allowing both women to learn more about each other. June was careful in her expressions, deciding not to say anything about Sam's plans. Steph asked about SRJ Enterprise, but June dodged any questions about it. When they had finished their meal and finished the rest of the wine, Stephanie spoke up. So, June, you mentioned that in order for Sam and I to have any chance of mending relations, I need to win over your sister Rebecca, Stephanie said, carefully bringing the whole dinner to this point. That's exactly it. She's the one guarding the gate, June replied. Well, I have a reliable plan for this case. Oh, please, share it, June smiled. How exactly do you plan to turn my sister, who sees you as a demon straight from hell, into the loving sister you pretend to be? It's simple. I will win your favor first, and then you will help me win her over. An interesting approach, June grinned. And how are you going to win my favor? Oh, it's simple. My plan is to take you to my house and make love to you all night. Then tomorrow you'll say you're sick so we can have fun all day and all weekend. I'm sure by the time you get to work on Monday morning, you can't wait to tell your sister what a wonderful woman I am, and how much you want her to accept me as her new girlfriend. I see. So, What's to stop me from turning down your advances and make me trust that you're serious about wanting to be my girlfriend? Two things, actually. First, you've already said I'm your type, and I genuinely believe you're attracted to me. Second, I just shared my biggest secret with you. None of my family or friends know that I'm a lesbian. No one even suspects it. By doing this, I'm exposing my secret to the world, something I've never done for anyone before. The fact that I'm willing to come out should show you how serious I am. If you still have doubts after this weekend, just wait and see my parents and Jimmy cut ties with me when they find out. I've already told you that I plan on rejecting them. This will just speed things up and prove my intentions. Holy crap, sis. What happened to you? You look awful, Rebecca exclaimed when her younger sister June finally dragged herself into the office on Monday morning. A serious lack of sleep from 3 straight days of non-stop activity. If you think I look bad, you should see my new girlfriend, June replied. Wow. Okay, so who's this new girlfriend and how did this all happen so fast? Rebecca asked. Tell you what, let me get some caffeine first, then I'll need to meet with you and Sam. I have some news for both of you. How about we meet in Sam's office in 20 minutes? Sure. Go get some coffee. You definitely need it. So, June, what's this? I'm hearing about a new girlfriend, Sam asked as a worn-out June entered his office. Well, I had an unexpected guest on Thursday while you two were out of town. That led to an even more surprising dinner than a full weekend together. And now it seems I've ended up with an even more unexpected girlfriend. Okay, so who is it? Becca asked eagerly. June let the tension hang in the air for a moment as she glanced between her sister and future brother-in-law. Her name is Stephanie Johnson. She watched their expressions change from happiness and smiles to complete shock. It took a few moments before either of them could speak. My sister, the bitch? Well, sort of, but I discovered some interesting things about her and the rest of your family. Before you get too upset, I did a bit of investigating after she left my office and before we met again later that evening. It turns out she realized what she did wrong shortly after you left. She's genuinely sorry for how she treated you. You're not seriously just believing her, even if she did sleep with you all weekend. Of course not. And by the way, my name's June, not Shirley. She chuckled, watching Sam and Rebecca roll their eyes at the joke. But seriously, I checked up on it. Several longtime employees mentioned how she acted for a while after you left. She seemed really sad and down for months, even saying she missed you. Couldn't they just be loyal to her and feeding you a bunch of crap to help her out? I doubt it. Remember Kate? Even she told me about it. Sam remembered the secretary well, who had been dealing with clients for a long time, and he knew that he and Steph had always hated each other. If Kate said that, then it's probably true. Okay, but I'm pretty sure Steph isn't a lesbian. Actually, she's a lesbian. She is 100% lesbian. Trust me, she knew all the subtleties of sapphic love. That's one of the things that convinced me. She talks openly with you and tries to build a better relationship. She completely shuts herself off from the rest of the family. It sounds kind of selfish. I think she understands what's going on and just takes care of herself. I'm sure that's partly true, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I suggest hiring her as my personal assistant so that we can keep an eye on her. That way we'll know how sincere she is. In the worst case, we could use it to gather information about the others, June suggested. Why not? Sam agreed. Obviously, we will install tracking software on her computer, tablet, and phone to see if she tries to do anything. Make an appointment with the 3 of us this afternoon. We will ask your brother to install the software and offer her a job if everything goes well. Just make sure you're thinking with your head and not with other parts of your body," Rebecca teased her sister as they wrapped up the meeting. Sam sat at his desk in shock that afternoon, listening to his sister speak. He was taken aback by the venom she expressed when discussing their parents, brother, and especially Camille. She revealed that she had been pretending to get along for the past 10 years because she had no other options and needed to stay in the family's good graces. She also divulged detailed information about the family's business operations, accounts, and their plans to regain control. When asked about her seemingly sudden change of orientation, she was surprisingly open about her past. She confirmed that she was now fully coming out and proudly acknowledged that this would likely destroy any remaining ties with their highly prejudiced family. "I've been miserable for the last 10 years. I'm so sorry it took me until after you left to figure things out. But by then it was too late. Even if you reject me now, I'm just grateful for the chance to finally apologize for how I treated you," Steph concluded. "All right. I accept your apology. It feels sincere, and I'm even open to seeing if we can rebuild some kind of relationship. But there's still the issue of trust. With everything you've done to me and your involvement with the rest of the family, I simply don't trust you. You have every reason to try and scam us, especially since I essentially took everything from you. That said, it seems like my future sister-in-law believes you deserve a chance. But make no mistake, we'll be watching you closely, and if you mess up, there will be severe consequences. Don't screw this up." "Oh, by the way, what's SRJ Enterprise?" Steph asked. "I've never heard of it." "SRJ stands for Samuel, Rebecca, and June. We own the company, so it didn't really matter what price we offered for our shares. We'd essentially be paying ourselves with our own money anyway." Should have seen that coming," Steph muttered. 6 months later. Stephanie never moved out of her house. Instead, June moved in, and the two began living together. Sam and Becca were consistently surprised at how well the relationship was progressing. It became clear that Stephanie was genuinely attracted to June and made a real effort to nurture their relationship. Stephanie took on the role of June's personal assistant and seemed to enjoy working under her, both professionally and at times otherwise, though Stephanie occasionally took the lead after hours. Sam opened up to her, and the two siblings began forming a better relationship. It also helped that both Steph and Sam were dating sisters, which meant they often socialized as couples. When Stephanie proudly came out as a lesbian to her parents and older brother, they disowned her. However, she relished the moment, especially when her mother screamed upon learning the identity of her girlfriend. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Camille could only watch as their former home was taken over by Dave and his fiancée. Feeling a bit sorry for their innocent children, Sam decided to ease up on his plans for revenge. Rather than ensuring Jimmy and Camille remained perpetually unemployed and financially ruined, Sam offered them jobs. It took a few months and the looming threat of eviction from their cheap apartment for them to swallow their pride and accept the offer. However, the positions Sam provided were far from what they had hoped for. Additionally, Sam, being well-connected socially, had made it quietly known that no one should do business with anyone who employed his former family. Jacob and Evelyn attempted to sue Sam to force him out and regain control of the company. Their case was weak, but they managed to find a struggling law firm willing to take it on. However, the case barely lasted 30 seconds into the first hearing. As soon as the two lawyers saw the striking redhead walk confidently to the defendant's table, they exchanged glances, packed up their briefcases, and quickly informed Jacob and Evelyn that they were withdrawing from the case before practically running out of the courtroom. Later, when Jacob and Evelyn angrily confronted the law firm demanding answers, one of the partners spoke up. Don't you know who their lawyer is?" "Of course we do," Jacob snapped. "That's the woman who represents the corporation that bought us out, and apparently she's also our disinherited son's fiancée." "So you really don't know," the second partner said, shaking his head. "That's Rebecca Caulfield. To be blunt, your case was weak from the start. We were hoping they might offer a settlement to avoid the costs of a court battle, or worst case, their lawyers would get it dismissed on the merits. But Rebecca? She's a different story. Now that we know she's engaged to your son, who you clearly despise, this is personal for her. She's not going to just win the case. She's going to completely destroy you, humiliate you, and then go after anyone representing you. We may need work, but we're not desperate enough to be obliterated by the most ruthless lawyer around." With their finances dwindling and no alternatives left, the couple had no choice but to move into a small, one-bedroom apartment they could afford on Social Security. Evelyn spends her days as an unpaid babysitter for Jimmy and Camille's children, as her oldest son and daughter-in-law are both working. Jacob, on the other hand, spends his days in frustration, sitting on the couch and complaining about how his life has turned out. The elderly couple no longer has any contact with their younger son or daughter, and rarely sees their oldest son due to his demanding job. "Excuse me, Mr. Johnson," the cashier said softly as she stepped into Sam's office. "Yes, Camille? What can I do for you?" He responded with a smile to his ex-wife and now sister-in-law. "Well, I was wondering if there's any chance you could get Jimmy transferred closer to home. He's been working out of state for the past few months, and we only get to see each other one day every other week. Even then, he's usually too exhausted to do anything." "I'm sorry, Camille, but all the local grunt labor positions are filled. To transfer Jimmy back, I'd have to move another worker to his current job, and that would just shift your hardship onto someone else and their family. It wouldn't be fair to them." The once attractive blonde began to cry. "Please, I mean, Mr. Johnson, I know you hate us and are punishing us for what we did, but I'm desperate. I haven't been with my husband in months. I'll do anything you ask. Please, please, please let me see him," she pleaded. "Anything?" A familiar female voice responded over the speakerphone. $1,000 says she doesn't really mean that," added another woman's voice. "From what she said when I met with the family to come out of the closet, I'm not buying it," said a third woman. Yes, Sam had looped in his fiancée, future sister-in-law, and sister as soon as his secretary mentioned that Camille wanted to talk. He had a pretty good idea of what the conversation would be about, and wanted his closest people to listen in and enjoy it. "Well, Camille, it seems like no one's convinced. Maybe you should be a bit clearer about exactly what you're willing to do. Honestly, I have zero interest in your low-life husband being anywhere near me. If I could, I'd send him to work in Siberia. Why on earth would I consider moving him any closer? At least now he gets to come home every other weekend. But it's an 8-hour drive. He gets home late Friday night, rests on Saturday, and then leaves again Sunday morning. With him being a low-wage laborer, he's completely drained when he gets home, and he just sleeps all day. Camille, that doesn't sound like my problem. If it's not working for you two, you're free to quit and find other jobs. You know that's not an option. We've already tried. We can't afford to pack up and move, and no one around here will hire us after what happened. I get that you hate us for what we did, but can't you show just a bit of compassion?" "Why would I? Neither of you ever showed me any compassion. In fact, you rubbed it in my face. The only regret you have now is because I'm getting revenge. It's not about what you did to me." Realizing that no words would convince her ex-husband, Camille realized that she had only one way out. "I'll do anything," she said. Secretly, she hoped that Sam would accept her offer and get his way. She always liked being close to Sam. She only agreed to Jimmy when she realized that he was the one who would inherit the company and achieve greater success. If there had ever been a photo next to the word gold digger, it would have been her photo. Maybe, she thought, she could get Sam back and get rid of that red-haired woman. After all, she felt extremely upset about her lack of intimacy lately. Besides, she was sure she could give Sam pleasure in bed if she was given the opportunity. The only thing that bothered her was that this conversation could be overheard by a red-haired woman and two women, about whom her husband and his family spoke disparagingly. "Okay," Becca chimed in over the loudspeaker. "How about this? Sam, you and I discussed the idea of having a threesome with another woman. To be honest, after I heard June and Steph describe the difference between a man and a woman, I was curious to try it. I doubt I'd be willing to repay them in kind, but I wouldn't mind seeing if it feels different." Camilla's discomfort only intensified when June added, "Yes, Steph and I talked about inviting another woman to the evening with whom we could also have fun. Jimmy's not coming this weekend, so maybe you two can invite her on Saturday, and we'll pick her up on Sunday." Sam thought for a moment before replying, "It might work, but otherwise I'm not interested in her. June, after that, you and Steph can do whatever you want with her." "Fantastic!" June exclaimed. "Steph and I have put together a whole collection of toys. We could use them all. Tell me, Camille, have you ever had a similar experience? You said you were ready for anything, right?" On Monday morning, Camille somehow made it to work, despite the discomfort. Her posture was unusually tense. She hoped Sam would keep his end of the bargain. "Good news, a girl of easy virtue," Steph announced when Camille entered the game. "The asshole will finish work this week and come back for the weekend. Next week he starts building a new building in the city." Camille was delighted with this news, as she was worried that they might terminate the agreement. "Oh, and by the way," Steph added, "June and I are thinking about hiring a maid to live with us. This will entail additional responsibilities, including accommodation and meals. We just wanted to let you know if it would interest you. Don't forget to mention that we rent equipment for parties and other events, my love," June shouted as she passed by. "Oh, right. Whoever we hire must also be bisexual. Becca and Sam will borrow her from time to help with their parties, both organizing and serving in every sense of the word, as well as for private events as needed." Camille was clearly stunned by the situation. She was deeply unhappy with everything that happened over the weekend. She only liked the moments when she could interact with Sam, but there weren't many of them. "You're a jerk! You set me up!" Camille screamed when she burst into Sam's office on Thursday afternoon, when she had just been handed the divorce papers. The divorce papers, with reference to adultery, contained several photographs in which Camille was having fun with various anonymous women and one man, carefully making sure that no identifiable features of the others were visible. "Damn it! He throws me out of the apartment and accuses me of being a bad mother and participating in private parties." Camilla continued to scream. Her prank lasted another 10 minutes and attracted a significant number of people, including Rebecca, June, and Stephanie. While she was screaming, Sam continued to sit with a calm smile. He didn't say a word until Camille finally calmed down and began to sob. "Becca?" "As the company's legal counsel, what options do I have regarding the serious allegations made against us by one of our cashiers?" "Well, Mr. Johnson, based on the evidence I've reviewed, she has no proof that you, myself, or any other employee at the firm is connected to her questionable actions." In my view, she's been caught in a compromising situation and is desperately trying to find any means to secure a payoff that would protect her reputation and provide financial security. My recommendation is to terminate her for creating a hostile work environment. Our security cameras have certainly captured enough of her false claims to justify that." Sam sighed. "All right. Even though she hurt me when she left me for my brother, I was really hoping that helping them out by hiring them when no one else would might help mend the rift in our family. It worked when we hired Stephanie, after all. So be it. Camille, I have no choice but to let you go. Please report to HR. They will explain your rights and options. Your final paycheck will be issued before you leave." But I have nowhere to go. Jimmy has kicked me out and filed a restraining order. Without this job, I can't even rent an apartment or get a hotel room for the night," she pleaded. "Camille, I suggest you explore all your options. Are you sure there isn't another position available that you're qualified for? Perhaps one that includes room and board?" June asked with a sly smile. Camille's face twisted in horror as the full realization of that Monday morning conversation hit her. Sam, Rebecca, June, and Stephanie had orchestrated this from the beginning. They gave her low-paying jobs to limit her options, sent Jimmy out of state to keep them apart, and worked him to exhaustion so that even when he could come home, he was too tired to be with her. They deliberately drove a wedge between them, eroding their affection for each other. They pushed her into desperation, making her vulnerable to their most depraved propositions. And finally, they provided her husband with evidence of her supposed promiscuity, all to manipulate him into filing for divorce and throwing her out with nowhere to turn. Now, with her reputation destroyed after being fired from a menial job for supposedly false accusations of harassment, no one would hire her. She was branded as someone who falsely accused her superiors in hopes of a big payout. Sure, she could move across the country, but what kind of life would that be? She had no references for a decent job and a glaring gap in her work history that she couldn't explain. The best she could hope for was a minimum wage job that wouldn't even cover her expenses, and she'd never see her children again. Her other option was to stay and live on the streets, begging for spare change just to survive, seeing her children only occasionally under supervised visits. The final option was so repugnant that she could hardly even consider it. "You know, if you worked for my little sister, I could represent you pro bono in your divorce and custody cases," Rebecca said. "Of course, I would never insist on primary custody of a girl of easy virtue like you, but I would at least provide you with unsupervised dates and minimal child support." 6 months later, Camille had just finished mopping the kitchen floor in preparation for the party Sam and Rebecca were throwing. She was wearing the French maid outfit she was already used to. She hadn't heard from Jimmy for a long time. He was completely repelled by her new lifestyle. She wanted to talk to him and explain how much she hated it and how she was being forced to do it. But he refused to even look at her. Her visits with the children were arranged in such a way that she picked them up at a neutral place after he had already dropped them off and left. "Hello, a girl of easy virtue. Good news," June announced as she entered the kitchen of her new brother-in-law and sister's house. "We have just received the final decision on your divorce. Congratulations, you're not married to that jerk anymore." "Oh, and look what else has come," Rebecca added. "This DVD shows Jimmy getting into a relationship with another woman when he was working out of state, and you were at home being faithful and pining for him. The timestamps on the videos prove that he cheated on you a few months before you first offered yourself to us. It's a pity that we didn't have this evidence when he first filed for divorce. You could have achieved a much more advantageous settlement with full custody and child support, but okay, it's too late now." she concluded cheerfully, leaving the room. Jacob and Evelyn spent the rest of their lives barely making ends meet, relying solely on social security. Bitterness and anger prevented them from contacting Sam, and prejudice prevented them from reuniting with their daughter. The only joy they found was grandchildren from their eldest son, but even that was overshadowed by painful memories of videos showing their mother in compromising situations. Jimmy continued to work as a low-paid laborer in his brother's company, with no prospects for promotion. Despite numerous attempts to find a better job, he was invariably refused. His lack of special skills and the tarnished reputation of his business education, due to the collapse of his company, left him with no opportunities. Even when he tried to leave and start all over again, Rebecca filed a lawsuit on behalf of Camille forbidding him to take the children. His attempts to make acquaintances were mostly unsuccessful, as few women were interested in a single father with limited means. Sam and Rebecca got married and had 3 children. Sam had never been close to Camille. Although he had entered into other relationships with her, it had always been with Rebecca's consent. Rebecca remained faithful to Sam, and all 3 of their children were equally loved and inherited equally. There was no favoritism in their family. June and Stephanie also got married. Although their relationship began under unusual circumstances, they fell deeply in love with each other. Stephanie and Sam have a strong brotherly relationship. Despite the fact that Camille worked as a privileged maid, she was perceived as just a toy. The firstborn, the chosen one, the direct heir, someone who couldn't do anything wrong, the one who had the right to do so. The fall was long and difficult for both the child and the parents who created the situation. Child in the family, spoiled, innocent, protected. Was she punished enough? Many will object that she did not, but she was pardoned. The desire to take revenge on her was tempered by the fact that she showed remorse. Middle child, forgotten. Another child, someone who has to take care of himself, someone who becomes independent and develops a desire to take revenge on those who wronged him, and eventually becomes ruthless and determined.